Welcome to the Love Intervention. I'm Pastor Evans.
I'm Mrs. Evans.
The Love Intervention, if you haven't been with us before, is a Christian perspective on dating, courtship, and marriage. Now, even though I'm a counselor by trade, neither my wife or myself are licensed therapists. So if you find that you need some extra help after we've had these type of conversations, please seek out some professional help, okay? I'm not saying that you're gonna need professional help, but if you do, please seek it out. So today, what we're discussing is what we learn from our siblings about love that might affect or can affect their future romantic relationships or our future romantic relationships.
Right.
Okay, right. Okay, very good.
Right, very good.
Very good. It may sound a little weird to talk about what our brothers and sisters tell us about or teach us about love and learning how to love people. But believe it or not, other people have thought about this.
Right.
And they wrote articles about it.
Right. And so we spent a few weeks investigating and researching
you want me to bring you back in?
This topic. Wait, I'm saying my part.
Oh, okay.
Why you cut me up, bro? You see how he do me? This how he do me, y'all.
All right.
Okay, so we spent a few weeks researching, investigating this topic, and we came across a couple of articles that I enjoyed, and that I don't know about him, and that I enjoyed them, and they really gave me some insight and brought forth some of the things that I thought gave me a way to say them. So in the first article is called Bustle. It's how your siblings affect your romantic relationships. And so the article says, your relationships with your siblings can affect your personality traits, your communication style, and even in the future, your romantic relationships. And so I really appreciate that, because it definitely puts at the forefront how we learn how to love and how we learn how to act and respond in not only our brother-sister relationships or our familiar relationships, but also those relationships that we'll seek outside with friends and eventually romantic partners.
Right. Good. You gonna ask a question?
So, do we believe that our sibling relationships affect our romantic relationships? And so that's the question before us. Do I believe that? Does he believe that? And do you guys believe that your sibling relationships, whether they were siblings by birth or siblings by adoption, like friends who are now your siblings, do we believe that those relationships can and will affect your future romantic relationships?
Cool. Good stuff. All right. So, in an effort to kind of get us started, I found a couple of quotes. She finds articles, I find quotes. I found a couple of quotes that really kind of speak to this relationship. Siblings can teach you the meaning of a loving embrace, right? Mm-hmm. And the second one is, I think is really cute. The Lord help the mister who comes between me and my sister. So I think those quotes kind of give us an insight into how sibling relationships can help us develop comfort and confidence in our loving relationships, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I believe is that sibling relationships provide insight into what I call the other side. Because men think the way they think, or boys think the way they think, girls think the way they think. But if you have that opposite sex sibling, you can get some insight into how the opposite sex thinks, right? Because I'm gonna think how I think, and for me, I've only ever known how to think like a man, and we need to know how the other sex thinks if we want to be successful in our relationships.
We need to have an idea, because men never know how women think.
That is true. That is very true.
You can definitely have an idea.
Yeah, we can get a little bit of an insight.
Right, and then when you get married, you can become an expert on how your wife thinks, but then you don't know how any other woman thinks because you just don't.
You can become an expert on how you think your wife thinks.
Right.
Or at least get real close, because look, don't ever think you're gonna be an expert on how women think. You can let that one go. That's a free one. I'll give you that freebie. All right. Second one. It gives you honest feedback. Right. So you have your opposite sex, if my words would work. Sibling can give you honest feedback on the things that you might think are good or bad. Right. Because your siblings aren't trying to impress you.
Right.
So they can give you the for real feedback on what you think might be good or bad. Okay. And they can teach you strategies for interaction, right? Because you have to learn how to interact with people in general. But if you have that sibling relationship, they can teach you strategies or ways to interact with people in a relationship that's lifelong. So you're not going to get away from them, right? They're always going to be your brother. They're always going to be your sister. So you have to learn how to figure out how to work with them.
Right.
And that becomes important. Right? Yeah.
In our discussions with this specific topic, I'm going to get it right, we looked at a lot of different areas on how siblings affect each other's ability to build skills that will soon be used and affect their romantic relationships. And so a couple of areas that we looked at as we did our research was confidence, conflict, and power and control, and how those things affect the way that you love your sibling and begin to learn how to work within your family unit as those members who are closest together. I mean, we tend to be close to our parents, but we tend to be even closer with our siblings or not. So we want to look at how those things affect the way that you love, as well as how you build those skills so that you can later become an individual who can be successful in future relationships.
So we said we're talking about three different areas there then. We're talking about confidence, we're talking about dealing with conflict, and then we're talking about power struggles.
Right.
All things that are part of romantic relationships.
Right, and we're going to have a brief discussion about those.
All right. So let's start by looking at confidence.
According to a 5-year study of 190 families by Penn State University, people with one or more siblings of the opposite sex saw themselves as more compatible or capable of both attempting and interacting with the opposite sex. And I felt that interesting because sometimes we find ourselves dealing with intimidation, shyness, unrealistic expectations about the opposite sex based on what we see on TV or how we interact with our parents, depending on how they parent. And we find that as we grow later, it creates an issue that can be scary because we are not as we're not as outspoken as we need to be. The expectations that we have for a partner are just really unrealistic because we base them on more of what our father did or more of what our mother did and not on what they're capable of doing and what they bring to the relationship. And so we try to love them the way that we've loved other people. And it just doesn't work. And then we sometimes can find ourselves intimidated based on the confidence that we built or were able to build among our siblings. And then when we go out into the world to build relationships, we have a spirit of intimidation. And we don't feel confident, like we can't approach someone or we're not at their level or whatever.
So are we saying that our sibling relationships can build confidence or just affect our confidence?
Right. They can build and affect.
Right.
So say like you have a relationship and you feel and your sibling is like being your cheerleader and all these things, and so now you have this great sense of confidence, and hopefully you have parents who are also building that confidence. But then later on, the relationship with your sibling becomes takes a turn, and that can affect the confidence that you were building, because now this cheerleader that you had in this person they've turned into your worst enemy sometimes, and it can affect your confidence on what you felt like or how you feel about yourself, depending on what the situation is. And so, yeah,
that took a turn.
Right.
Because I was thinking that we were talking about like how our siblings can help build our confidence, but I didn't really consider the fact that if the relationship goes a different way, then it could affect our confidence in a negative way too. But it's different from when we were talking in a previous episode about learning how to love from our parents, because our parents kind of are that first loving relationship that we have, and if those go well, then the others can go well, or if those go bad, it can start you off poorly. But now we're talking about sibling relationships. If those go well, in the same vein, right? If those go well, you can get a better start, and you can have a better understanding of how you should interact and react in those type of relationships. But if they go poorly, then it could be bad for you too. So hopefully, though, we can get those positive interactions, because they're different, right? They're more on the same level type relationship, not a top down. So,
and whether you have a strong sense of confidence or you have a poorer sense of confidence, it's not that you can't go back and look at these areas in your life and try to figure out how you can better yourself. But it is an area that you need to just be aware of as we're going out and trying to attempt to love people in romantic relationships.
Yeah, it is.
So.
So
So
it can affect your confidence in a couple of different ways, because then you can watch your siblings in their relationships. All right, and that gives you some insight too. So and then you can ask questions and
that don't really affect your confidence though.
I know, but here's what I'm saying. Let me get my point out, woman.
Okay, well, I don't know where he's going.
You don't know where I'm going.
I don't.
See, because I just thought about this. So if you watch, if you have siblings that have relationships, you can kind of watch what they're doing and ask questions, so that when you get to a point where you want to be in a relationship too, you've already had those conversations. That's
but that's not confidence.
It is confidence, because if I have an older brother,
that's more like conflict.
That's not conflict, because if I have
when
an
you're
older brother,
watching your siblings and how they deal with their relationships, you can ask questions based on how they handle issues.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, I have no idea what you're saying,
If you let me finish it, I'll tell you.
It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
If I had an older brother, and he, like, remember the story that one gentleman was telling about, he didn't know how to approach a girl, and he asked his brother, how should I do this? And the advice that he got from his brother helped him build confidence. That's what I was saying. So if you have an older sibling that way.
Okay, well, that does make sense. Not what you were saying.
But if you would let conflict. So sibling relationships can teach us how to handle conflict and healthy communication with the opposite sex in a relationship that is lifelong. So you're gonna, like, if you have a sibling, you're not getting away from them. That's what we said before.
You ain't getting away from them.
You ain't getting away from them.
I mean,
they're not ever gonna not be your sibling.
And you're not necessarily getting away from them from 0 to teen. I mean, as you grow up, there are opportunities that you're spending more time away.
What I meant to say was not get away from them, but they're always going to be your sibling. Whether regardless of how your relationship evolves or whatever, but they're going to be your family member. They're going to be your sibling. So when you figure out how to resolve conflict, it's in a relationship that's lifelong, right? So if you know how to do that, if you can figure out how to do that, then it can help in your later relationships. That's all I was trying to do. So. And these non-romantic relationships are vital to our growth.
Right.
Right. So it's not, you're not trying to convince somebody that you're worthy of their love. They're your brother or sister. Right. So figuring out how to deal with conflicts in these relationships can help you figure out how to deal with conflict just in general, which will help you in your later relationships.
Because just the mere fact that you are siblings should come with a level of like love already.
Right.
Right. You shouldn't ever have to, or I don't remember ever having to think, oh, does this person love me? I just always felt loved.
Right.
From my siblings.
Right.
And so it comes with, I don't want to say an instant, but it comes with a birthright.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
A birthright of instant, kind of like already built-in love.
Right.
That can increase or decrease as time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in an article from Psychology Today, for better or worse, siblings shape our close relationship. In that article, it says siblings resolve a range of issues from the mundane to the emotional in a variety of ways. They may rationally debate a solution to their conflict or scream and fight until someone gives in. However, they manage it even as young children. Siblings have to find ways to live together. In the process, they start to establish patterns that emphasize either cooperation or hostility. Mm-hmm. And so in the article, it basically set out 3 areas of compromise, avoidance, and attack. And it says compromise is a relationship enhancing method of conflict resolution, and attack is aggressive and destructive. Avoidance, although it may allow for a cooling off period between angry partners, ultimately distracts from a relationship because it prevents partners from actively confronting issues, and ultimately they grow apart, which happens a lot in romantic relationships, and so that as we grow and look back and kind of are on a journey of self-improvement, you can look back at how these elements played in your sibling relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you can, those 3 areas. What were they? What were the 3 areas?
Compromise, avoidance, and attack.
Avoidance and attack. So we can kind of look at, if we're talking about romantic relationships later, and you might want to have here's a little tidbit. You might want to get a little bit of an insight on the person that you're thinking that you might want to date.
Right.
And we always say, go look at their parent and see what they're going to look like when they get older. Right. But what's more important, what they're going to look like when they get older, is how they handle issues and how they handle conflict. So if you have an opportunity to see somebody with their sibling, you might see how they might conflict, or how they might handle conflict with you,
or how if they choose a path of avoidance, or attack.
Right. Yeah. So you can kind of see how those conflict patterns develop within sibling relationships. Right.
Right. Right.
And these are those foundational things about love and loving relationships that most people don't consider.
Right.
And I think that's why we're kind of trying to talk about it now.
And it's very telling on how they love through compromise, how they love through avoidance, and how they love through attack, which will give you a good indication on whether or not you care to be treated that way.
Right.
Because even in compromise, someone can treat you badly. They would throw it into your face that they're making a compromise, and you're happy that they should be compromising, and that's not a right way to love somebody, even though they call themselves coming to some type of agreement with you, whether it's your sibling and later a romantic relationship, and then how they choose to avoid you, whether they choose to ghost you or just which is altogether avoiding you, or whether they choose to avoid you in other ways,
or avoid the things that are important to you.
Right. And then whether or not you want to be in a relationship with someone who attacks you.
Right.
And how they attack. We think that there's no necessarily a way of attacking someone, but they don't have to attack you as an individual. They could attack the situation, and just be aggressive in how they believe or how they feel about a situation. And that can feel like an attack too, but they don't have to attack you as in your person,
right?
Because that's different,
right?
And so those are some ways that you can kind of look at it.
Yeah, and this is the love intervention that we're talking about,
right?
You know, making sure that we're intervening in areas that may be difficult in developing love, but if somebody starts attacking you, you might need another type of intervention.
Right. It doesn't necessarily always have to be physical attack, is what I'm saying.
Exactly. All right.
And so then those are, we talked about confidence and conflict.
Conflict.
And so now we are off to power and control.
Power and control, which is a huge part of a lot of relationships, not ours. Lean in and smile, woman. Hey. There you go.
A dimension of sibling relationships that distinguishes them from parent-child relationships in the role structure, which often dictates relational power dynamics. Sibling relationships can be egalitarian when siblings serve as playmates and companions with equal power, or they can be hierarchical, with one or both siblings striving to achieve dominance. And this is an article from the Journal of Family Issues. Sibling experience as predictors of romantic relationships, qualities in adolescence. So what it was saying was there were that sibling relationships differ from the parent-child relationship because of the roles that each sibling plays. Because whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, if looking back over your experience or if you're in the midst of the experience, siblings play different roles. There is an obvious role structure between parent and children. But a lot of the time, siblings have to work the role structure out depending on the child. And sometimes the structure is very charismatic because someone may want to be the more dominant sibling while others want that role too. And then here's another quote from the journal. Exposure to and adaptness with ongoing power negotiation in a sibling context may prove influential in later romantic relationships, as negotiation of power and control also occur in romantic relationships.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to come in. So siblings have to figure out how to negotiate this power dynamic, right? And most of the time there's going to be, a lot of times there's going to be some type of power dynamic. I know that older siblings tend to want to boss around their little siblings because I'm a little brother, and my older sister wanted to boss me around a little bit. Not too bad, but she was kind of bossy, right? And I love you, but she was a little bossy. But I was annoying too, right? So the power dynamic there's a kind of built-in like older sibling, younger sibling, and there's some roles that I've seen in my work that are always there. The older sibling's a little I don't want to say bossy because that sounds bad. Protective is a better word for it. Older siblings tend to be more protective, and younger siblings tend to be more annoying, right? But there is a level of power struggle that you have there because you're siblings, and it's not like you're not going to tell your mama what to do, or you're not going to tell your father what to do, but you can try to do that with your sibling. So that when we figure out how to negotiate those power dynamics, it can help us just in building relationships. I think that's what we're kind of talking about, right? Even though there's no real hierarchy between siblings, because even the older siblings are just siblings. Right,
everyone is just a sibling. But there is, like I said, there is a built-in, like, I'm the favorite, or I'm the oldest, or I'm the baby, which can dictate and oftentimes influence who has the negotiable power, or who has the real control in that situation, whether they can get mom and dad to do A, B, C, D, F, G, or mom and dad never do A, B, C, D, F, G when they ask. And so these are areas where we begin to build these skills that will soon affect our friendship relationships. And because we hope that the person that you end up with in a romantic relationship is your friend, and then it will affect that relationship.
Right, because when we're talking about these foundational love skills, right? These things that we figure out how to deal with other people, the way we figure out how we should deal with other people, and the way we see ourselves. And a lot of times our self image is shaped pretty significantly by our sibling relationships. So the way we see ourselves and how people should act and react towards us, we kind of develop during those sibling relationships. And so now we carry that into our friendships, like you were saying, and then eventually into our romantic relationships. So if we're looking at how we can either be better or be, I don't want to say it that way. If we're looking at how we should act and react in our later romantic relationships, it's useful to look at how we acted or reacted or felt in our sibling relationships.
Yeah, and again, this is we hope that information is helpful. A lot of our viewers may already have come through childhood, adolescence, hopefully entering into a great experience as young adults, and then being adults. And so while we're on our journey to make ourselves better, hopefully this information can help with your reflection, so that you know where you have been, where you are, and where you want to go as it relates to how you want to love in your romantic relationships.
Right.
And so this next section, we like to look at what God says to us in regard to our topic. We want to see what God says. We definitely always want to see what God says as we're trying to become more like Him, and show the love of Christ not only to the world, but also to those who are closest to us, because that is our ministry. That is our first ministry. So what did God say to us?
All right. So in 1 John chapter 2, verses 9 and 10, it says, "The one who says he is in the light and yet hates his brother is in the darkness until now. The one who loves his brother abides in the light, and there is no cause for stumbling in him." So that just brings us back to our topic in this way. If you love your brother, if you love your sister, and the way that we learn how to love our brothers and sisters will dictate how we walk through this world. And if we want to be in the light, meaning if we want to be walking and living the way that God would have us, if we want to develop relationships that God would have us develop, then it's going to be difficult to do that if we're not loving our brothers and sisters the way that God would have us do. All right. And the second part of the scripture says, the one who loves his brother abides in the light, meaning we're living the way that we should. We're developing relationships the way that we should. There's no cause for stumbling in him, meaning that we at least have what we need to develop relationships going forward. So that's what we want to do. Right. So making sure that those relationships are strong. All right.
I agree.
Right. So, and then in James, one of my favorite books in the Bible, if you haven't read James, read James. Gives us a lot of insight for how we should develop and how we should look at the way that we live, right? So James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20 says, "This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." And if we're talking about intervening in ways that our loving relationships can develop and grow the way they should. Even if wherever you stand with regard to Christianity, wherever you stand with regard to God, wherever you stand with regard to your religious beliefs. Right. Every relationship needs to have at least two partners. That's weird. Not like that. Every relationship must have partners that can adhere to just this. Be quick to listen. You got to listen to what people are saying. Right. We're talking about brothers and sister relationships today. It's difficult sometimes to listen to your brother and sister, but if we're developing romantic relationships, where is why you're listening to our show because we're talking about developing romantic relationships at some point, right? You got to be quick to hear. You got to listen to what people are saying. Even when you think they're wrong, even when you think they don't know what they're talking about, you got to at least hear it quickly.
Right, because
and listen quickly.
It provides a sense of that person feeling heard.
Right.
And that what they're saying is important. And you definitely want to communicate that what they're saying is important.
Right.
At least to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you want to hear.
Right.
Right.
And if it's important to them, it has to be important to you if you want your relationship to work.
Right.
So one, quick to listen, be ready to listen, and then be slow to speak. We don't always have to say anything, right? There's times where you need to respond, but you don't have to respond right away because you haven't heard them out.
Right.
Quick to listen, slow to speak, and then slow to get angry. Because if we're in relationships where we want them to work and we want them to last, being angry not going to accomplish that. So if we want to stay in relationships and want to be in relationships that we think we want them to last, being angry is not going to accomplish that. Which gets to the last part of this passage here. The anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God, right? And God would have us to be in good relationships. God would have us to be in loving relationships. God would have us to be in relationships that build us up and edify us. So our anger, our personal issues, and our personal way that we express things may not be the best thing for your relationship, for our relationships. Mm-hmm. So God would have us listen to each other, wait before we speak,
right,
and try not to get. And even if you get upset, you're going to get upset,
right.
You're going to get bothered by things that may or may not be said or done, but be able to slow that down so that you can build your relationship. All right.
Right.
Anything else you want to say?
Nope.
So, in that case, thank you for joining us today on the Love Intervention. And we appreciate you being here with us. And don't forget, if you like this video, to hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up. That would be good. And you know what would be better? If they go ahead and subscribe, hit the subscribe button. It's going to be right here near the end of the video. And then if you could, hit the notification bell so that you could be notified when our next video is released.
Right. We really enjoyed this time with you.
Mm-hmm. And we hope that the information that we share with you has been beneficial. Mm-hmm. And if it has been beneficial, share it with somebody.
Right.
So, if you feel like you need a little more help or a little more time to consider what's been said, always seek out someone that you could talk to, some professional help. And matter of fact, why don't you go talk to one of your brothers or sisters?
Right.
Maybe that would be helpful, and you can feel like, you messed me up.
No. No.
Right. So, that being said, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.